Howdy, all. I was going to say happy Tuesday. That would have been an homage to Ack, but happy Thursday. It was a rather long and busy day up in Toronto as the Maple Leafs and the Canadiens opened the season. And we'll talk a little bit about the behind-the-scenes stuff because I think people would be a little bit interested. But I have to start with this, because the New York Yankees will now face the Boston Red Sox, which is the battle of the two most expensive franchises, and or at least the two teams that spend the most money in Major League Baseball. And Russ, I have Red Sox friends.
Yeah,
and it's gonna be like a bloodletting. I can tell you, it's gonna be like back and forth stuff on Twitter, back and forth stuff on text for these 5 games. Especially if I won't say anything until the Yankees win, and then I'll probably be putting little gifs of like Will Smith dancing on the beach from what's the golf movie that he did with Matt Damon.
Oh,
Bagger Vance. As he's walking down the beach, he does a little sachet after Matt Damon's character buries the putt to tie the match. That I put that on as a sort of my like subtle trollish thing of a little celebration. And if the Yankees beat the Red Sox, that'll probably be as loud as I get, but that'll be something. So
I've never even seen that movie.
It's not the greatest movie, although Charlize Theron, any movie with her is thumbs up for me. We have Ak here. Hey, Ak.
Hello.
We're expecting Kevin any second here.
Okay.
So I just wanted to start the pre-show with and Ak, you've been at Stanley Cup Finals, so you know what it is.
Yeah, the last 12 of them.
Yes. And you know that the media horde that is there, and I got it firsthand a couple years ago in Pittsburgh. The amount of media for a Montreal-Toronto game with Tavares as the opening act.
I can't imagine. I really can't imagine. I mean, that's just I can't imagine. I mean, I'm sure it's like the Cup final, but oh my gosh.
Well, and the thing is that at the Cup final, like it's set up for that kind of volume, but you're basically stuffing 4 times the amount of people in the same space that say the normal 15 or 20 media members. I mean, I got there. I got to the spot early to interview Tavares and Austin Matthews in the scrum.
Right.
So I got like right close. And by the way, you can see me on the Leafs video. It's just it's like there's a thing called scrum lurkers. I'm gonna be on that thing because I was basically in the shot. But I got, and the guy was very apologetic afterward, but there was a reporter from one of the outlets in Montreal who had the microphone with the wire, and was holding it out. And I was pinned up against a bench, and this guy extended the wire, and he was basically had it around my neck, not looped, but around my neck, and it was almost cutting off my not my circulation, but my breathing. So it was like
pressure on those guys,
Oh yeah, I know, and there was another reporter who needed to get Tavares' sound, and she had a small little recorder, and she was, she was about 6 feet away, and I got her recorder and put it on top of mine so she could get the sound. But it was nuts, and it's always nuts for Montreal, Toronto, but because it was Tavares and it was the season opener, it was just.
Well, it wasn't ever nuts for the Islanders, and that's the difference of Tavares being in a different market. But I got something else to talk about. So there's a live album that's out now, or we're going to put in quotations live, for the band Kansas. And, they've been around since the 70s. And I actually saw them a couple of years ago. They toured with Yes, and it was Steve Walsh's last tour. And to be honest, I could see why he retired. Like, he was having a little trouble.
Yeah.
And so this band puts out a live album. They have a different singer, but he's not like a young guy. And people instantly notice that the album has been auto-tuned. And you know what? When you listen to it, you could hear people and ambient sound when the music's being played. And then when the singing is on, there's no ambient sound. And it's not perfect, but it's really good. And it's like, here's the thing. I know that this is done now in recording of albums and other things. It should never be in the recording of a live album, and too many people are pointing it out for it not to be.
Well, it can be done. It's done in every recording of every live
well,
album. But it can't be done without it being noticed. I think the problem is that you noticed it. I mean, honestly, I've done live albums and they've been I've been around other things, and there is some auto tuning that goes on, not often, and it's really subtle. I mean, if you have to, chances are it was rushed together, and because in order to, when you don't hear the ambient sound from a crowd, that's very controllable because you have microphones throughout the crowd. You can bring the mics down in the mix of it, or you can even have like a compressor that clicks off at a certain point.
Well, I mean, I've heard of bands who basically will record the band will record the crowd, and then we'll go into the studio afterward and record
that's very, very common.
And that's that to me that's bastardizing live recording. It's either I want to hear what it sounds live or just go into the studio.
Made, Mike.
warts and all for sure, Mike. I'm there with you. I like the flubs, the interest and stuff. But before,
if I've recorded an album and I screwed up, so say that band has an incredible performance and I screwed up on one thing, all right. And that one thing is the only, like, it's a keyboard part. Say I played a G chord instead of a D chord or whatever.
Right.
And the band kept going because, we're professionals or whatever. You don't think it's okay for me to fix that?
No.
I think it's totally fine. I just don't care. It doesn't matter to me. I'd rather hear the naturalist. But interesting to your point, Ed,
want to hear
before auto-tune came and the technology, the most famous guy for dealing and fixing things was Frank Zappa. And you'll know this, Zach. It wasn't digitally done. It was called overdubs, right?
Yeah.
And he overdub vocals, overdub guitar solos, because he was a perfectionist.
Right. He layered them.
Yeah. His live albums really aren't all that live. And if you go back and look at some of the early produced ones, there's massive liner notes of overdubs and vocals and different things.
Right.
And that was how he saw it. It was still live in his mind, but it was the right way he wanted it presented.
Well,
I just saw Ed Sheeran live a week ago, and it was phenomenal. I mean, just unbelievable. And he does just himself. Like, it's incredible. It was at the Lincoln Financial Field. So you're talking about 70,000 people, and just a guy and a guitar, which is incredibly hard to pull off. Unbelievably profitable, like, from his perspective.
Sure.
Like, just not taking a band, like, Taylor Swift pays her band like $40,000 a night. So you're thinking about this guy's making an extra $40,000 a night by doing this. But he also definitely he loops his guitar, he creates the entire thing. It's off the charts, and he's overdubbing as he's going, but he's not it's a different kind of thing. Overdubbing means a lot of different things.
Well,
to me, there should be a certain amount of spontaneity in live music, and once you start taking that out, it's no longer
there is, but if you make a little mistake, fix it.
But sometimes the mistakes are I mean.
I know, and believe me, that as a band, the difference between, like, I sang the instead of or an instead of whatever, versus me playing a G versus playing a G on the bass versus an E, like that there's a difference. Like, that's not spontaneity. That's
I've seen bands, forget words in concerts and they laugh and they can.
That's all right. I don't have a problem with that. I agree with you.
Yeah, and sometimes the little, and we'll stop here because Kevin's patiently waiting.
Yeah, sorry.
No, there's a lot of my brother's favorite band is Traffic, and they put out a half live album back in the late '60s, and on one of the songs there's like sort of like a sound surge from the soundboard. Now I listen to that song, and if I don't hear that, if that was cleaned up in editing, I don't recognize the song. I'm so used to that imperfection that it's part of it. It's part of the experience of listening to the song now. So
I get that. I mean, and that's something you have to consider if you're an artist. You have to consider, and you have to listen to your musicians, listen to your fans, and see. Right. There's certain things but there are certain mistakes that just are ridiculous. Like and you can't. And if you're recording it live, you can't just fix it at the time. And I don't know. I'm okay with being fixed. Usually, actually, the auto-tune is on while the person is performing, by the way. It's not actually even, it was probably auto-tuned at the time the performance was going on.
And speaking of mistakes, let's talk about Tom Wilson.
That's Hockey World. It is Thursday, October 4th, 2018.
I'm Michael Agello, tired from my trip to Toronto.
I'm Peter Tessier, dealing with snowy, cold Winnipeg.
That's incredible.
I'm Russ Cohen, and I just wrote about Kerryon Johnson, who I'm sure Kevin is aware of and probably wants to see get more carries?
I'm Kevin Allen of USA Sports. I do want to see him get more carries, and I tend to like my live albums live and uncorrected. But as a journalist, I want to correct my mistakes immediately when I put them on.
As a journalist, I'm fine leaving my mistakes. That's the odd thing about it. And I'm Eklund. You're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. We got a lot to get to today, so we're going to talk about Tom Wilson first, really quickly. But we're going to try to predict the entire NHL in the next 40 minutes.
Sure.
So, and that with 5 people, we can do this. We can do this.
Yes, we can.
It'll be interesting. So, Tom Wilson, 20-game suspension, in my opinion, completely and utterly justified when you consider what they said on the thing, which is incredible. That he's his forced suspension in 105 games played. I mean, this is a problem. I mean, this is a guy who is out of control and not learning anything. But he's going to learn now. I mean, 20 games is 20.
Will he?
Well, the only thing I'll say on it is, I said this the other day, if the NHL went with like 5 or 8 games, then Tom Wilson gained an edge by doing this in preseason to let everybody know he's there. But now that it's 20 games, if it stays at 20 games, he's no longer effective in that role, and he should give it up, and he should just play hockey.
What do you think, Kev?
No, there's no argument on this. Like, I think the NHL got it completely right. I never suspected that they would go this far, and they really should have, and they did. And either he hasn't been able to kind of figure it out, and he's not smart enough to realize this is costing him, or he doesn't care. And either way, he needs to rehabilitate his game. He's a very valuable player. Like, it's almost forgotten now that he had 15 points in 21 playoff games last season. He can play the game. And I thought Doug Armstrong's comment about how 30 teams would probably scoop him up if he was put on waivers, are accurate. And I think he has a lot of value in the league. But, he's no value if he's going to constantly get himself in trouble. And I can't imagine, they would never say so publicly, but I can't imagine that his Capitals teammates are very pleased with him. Like, they want him in the lineup and performing at a high level. And the sad thing about this is that he could be a very effective player and not ever touch anyone's head. Yeah. Like, if he runs into Sundqvist and goes through his core as opposed to going high on that, that's a clean hit, far less dangerous. And that's the other element that needs to be brought up. When I read these arguments about how, in the old days you had to keep your head up and, it was incumbent upon the player, that's just nonsense. This is not the 1970s or the 80s or the 90s. We know a lot more about the danger of concussions now. Nobody wants to see a player permanently having his brain altered by a hit, and this was a preseason game, for guys.
Right.
All of that in, this was the right call.
Yeah.
I'll be disappointed if he appeals and they reduced it. I think this is the right decision. Stick with it.
That's why I called it dumb, Kevin, because it was in a preseason game. I mean, if you wanted to go out and send a message after, being suspended 3 times last year, and you wanted to go out and hit somebody, it's very capable for you to do it cleanly. And he's 6'5" and 230 pounds or something like that. He's a freight train, so he could just hit people legally and it would be impactful. But now it's funny. His contract, he signed his I think it was 5 or 6 year deal at $5.1 million, and the first year was $6.1 million, and 5 of it was signing bonus. He's basically playing pro bono for the rest of the year.
The fact that he's not losing it, he's really not losing any money because the bonus doesn't count in a situation like this.
Well, he's not getting a paycheck.
That has to be examined. To me, that's something that,
I'll take the $100,000 that's left, by the way. If somebody can give that to me, I'll take it.
He's going to lose something like $200,000 on this.
No, he loses the whole thing.
No, I heard the bonus doesn't count. Is that not true?
Yeah, the bonus doesn't count.
Yeah, he was already paid the bonus on July 1st.
Bonus is paid. He's now playing for free.
Yeah,
he's playing for $100,000.
According to the league.
Oh, really?
That's the average salary. If you look at maybe
I'm wrong.
All right. Now, unless I read that wrong, I mean, you can call Mike. Probably can call the release up, but I think the release said
I'll look at it
that it's based on the average salary, because I thought that originally too. And to be honest, we had someone else writing up. I was writing a column, but we had Mike Brem, my colleague, writing it up, and he wrote that it was based on the average salary, and I was kind of struck by that. I always thought it was based on the actual salary, but he said no. The release said it was based on the average salary. So
I'll tell you this too, and this is the other arguable point. So I looked up on a website, and it looks like last year, Michael Haley had the most fights in the NHL with 22. He only had one game suspension for roughing. So the headshot is now getting more suspension time than fights. And then you kind of wonder, how many fights could a player have? It seems like you could have 22 and only receive a suspension for not even a fight. And so that's the other part that has to be, because there's headshots going on in fights too.
Yeah. Well, the whole point of a fight is to hit someone in the head. It's not like they're going for body blows. This isn't
kind of goes back to what Kevin was saying about the 70s too, because if you had to skate with your head up in the 70s or whatever, but if you watch guys skate in the 70s versus them skating now,
it's not even close.
I mean, the amount of actual impact to your body in the 70s versus now is astounding. I mean, and a punch is hard, but the difference between a punch and skating at like 35 miles an hour across the neutral zone and getting flatboarded, that's way worse.
But what about the multiple fight guys now? Like when?
Oh yeah, no, there's no question.
Well,
here's the issue: that the physics of our game have become dangerous. Like, even fighting. Like when I was growing up. Now this is an oversimplification, so don't hang me on this. But the fighting in the era when I grew up, it seemed more like barroom brawling, cowboy bar brawling. Like two guys trading off for schoolyard. A couple of hits to the jaw and it was over, and so forth. Now, because players are so much bigger, they're much, they're probably at 220, 225, and also they've been trained. There's an element of MMA in the way they fight now, and they understand, how to make their punches more dangerous. And because of all that, I think the fighting has become more dangerous, and we have to be mindful of that. And then, as Eck put in it so well, like there are car crashes going on the ice now. The speed players are now skating 30 miles an hour.
Let's tie this in to what we heard yesterday from Brendan Shanahan when he said, well, back in our day, we used to take less. Would Brendan Shanahan expect his younger players to take less when this kind of stuff is going on? If that was Austin Matthews getting railroaded by Wilson, he wouldn't expect anyone to take less.
If that was Austin Matthews getting railroaded by Tom Wilson, Nazem Kadri probably would have taken a baseball swing at his head.
Yeah. The point being is this is why they want their money. This is why, because this stuff is crazy. Well, here it's causing more damage than the old knuckle dusting fake fights and just goonery that happened in the 80s.
Yeah, but Kevin's right. It basically is elevated to, like when the Derek Boogards and the Brashears came in, it went from being like a bar fight, as you said, to fighting Ivan Drago. That's what it's like. Now Wilson from the statement, Wilson is considered a repeat offender under the CBA, and based on his average annual salary, will forfeit $1.260 million. The money goes to the player's assistance fund. His base salary this year, after being paid a $5 million bonus on July 1st, is $1.1 million. So he's got to go into his coffers for $160,000.
Good. Thank God. I was really worried about that.
Hold on. So I still think like the Michael Haleys in the league are hiding. He had how many penalty minutes do you think he had last year?
Michael Haley, about 100.
The only guy that was over 200, and he had 22 fights.
Yeah. Penalty minutes. Like it's, in this day and age, that's a little shocking that it's actually that high.
But he was nobody else had more than 13 fights, though.
Yeah.
Like he's an outlier.
But the thing is, I think after 5 or 6 fights, you should be suspended for a game or two automatically. Because I don't believe that all these fights are just like happening because of frustration in a game. Well, a lot of these are orchestrated fight.
Well, last thing, but Peter, you tweeted out last night about the Marchand fight between him and Eller. I mean, I only saw like a 5-second snippet, but Lars Eller is probably picking up his teeth still.
Yeah, I mean, anyone who is trying to justify that Eller having a little bit of a chirp is cause to have your face slammed by Brad Marchand, then pile drive backwards into the ice. Marchand should get what Wilson does. And in fact, Marchand's a worse human being. Like, Wilson's just a train car, but Marchand does it in all capacities. He's not afraid of exchanging bodily fluids. He's prepared to slew foot and submarine you. He does it every way possible, yet he gets nothing. He's not only just a repeat offender. What Marchand did is equivalent to Kevin's thing of a bar fight. He went after a guy who pissed him off, looked at his girl wrong, went up to him as the big tough guy, and slugged him in the face. It was gross. Marchand should get 10 games minimum. It was sick.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Totally agree with you.
Like, just sick.
Do you want me to just briefly touch on the Leaf game last night?
Yeah, I don't. I mean, yes. I mean, I don't actually. Let's. I think we all kind of watched it. I want to get into our predictions.
No, I know. We got to move.
And lots to do. And I was thinking about different ways of doing this. So if you didn't watch the Leafs game last night, they won, and it was a great game. It's worth watching.
Not actually live. Not really. It wasn't that great.
Okay. Well, I thought it was fun. It was fun to watch, and you know, gosh, man,
they won ugly.
They won ugly. Exactly.
They won ugly, but you know, give Montreal a little credit.
There's the Cliff Notes version. They won ugly. Thank you.
All right, here we go. So I think the best way to do this, I think, would be for me to give you my picks, and then you guys tell me why I'm wrong, because I think that's what we're going to get down.
Well, I'm an expert at that.
And so, and in different divisions, for example, like let's you know, for this division, I'm going to start in the Atlantic, and you know, this is let's go with Kevin and Mike on this one, because you know, Kevin lives in the Detroit area, you know, Mike's in Toronto. So and then we'll move on to the next one. So
okay.
And I've got at number 8, I've got the Detroit Red Wings, and actually I'm starting with the Red Wings right off the bat. My feeling are that they're going to be good eventually, but they feel like the one team that's admitting they're rebuilding, which I like. So I'm gonna go 8th Detroit. Any issues with that?
Nope.
No.
What do you have them?
They have Detroit last.
Yeah, no, they're going to be near the bottom of the Atlantic Division, and you know their fans admitted they were rebuilding before the
That's a good point. The best case scenario for them would be getting Jack Hughes. You know, that's really, I have a best case scenario for each team, so that's my best case scenario for them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Jack Hughes from the, you know, played in the Michigan area there, obviously.
Yeah, that would be ideal. A 1-2 center of Hughes and Larkin would be
that would be phenomenal. So the next spot, I think I'm going to have some issues maybe with I've got Ottawa. I got Ottawa at number 7. Are you okay with that, Mike?
No, I buy that. After, and I'm not sure who your next one is, but after last night and seeing Carey Price beat Carey Price, he played very well, made a couple great saves. I was penciling Montreal in for 7th and thought Ottawa, based on some of the offensive talent that they still have, at least for 3/4 of the year before they trade Stone and Duchesne, would finish ahead of them. But I think Montreal can stay in games if Price can play like that. So I buy it out.
So I think Montreal 6. So I think those bottom 3 teams are pretty much universally accepted, right? I mean, that's like,
I have no problem with any of it.
Detroit, right. Ottawa, Montreal in some order. I'm with you, Mike, and that's why I had Montreal before last night, because I did this before the game. But I like Carey Price a lot, and I think at the end of the day, he looks like he looked in preseason from talking to people like he had a mission, and I think that he will definitely win games for them. So that's my Montreal in 6th. But here's where the fight's going to come. Number 5, I have Boston.
No,
I disagree.
Tell me why Boston is better than the teams above them. Maybe.
All right, I'll just say it easily. Goaltending, strength of their top 6.
Yeah, defensively, Boston is significantly better than Buffalo. Like, we're all excited about Dahlin, and I seem to like Ristolainen better than the good fans of Buffalo. But other than that, you know, they need a lot of work.
You know, unnoted. Well, last night they gave up 7 goals, so you know my talk about Boston, you know, sounds a little bit hollow, but Tuukka Rask will be around in terms of longer than Roberto Luongo, unless Luongo departs from his, you know, recent injury history. That's my only thing with like the teams like Florida is I don't know whether Luongo can play 50 to 55 games, whereas Tuukka Rask will play 60 to 65. They have Halak as a backup, who's, you know, as a backup fine. their defense, their team defense is great. And, you know, Pasternak, Marchand, Bergeron, Krejci, they're battle tested, and they got a lot of good young players. So I don't think they're going to slip.
Let me give you this. If there's anything to this, you can tell me if they're wrong. Okay. The Bruins were better last year than we all thought they'd be, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Right. And they were definitely better. I mean, they finished 1 point. They finished in first place, right? They finished in first.
No,
they finished in second, obviously. 1 point behind Tampa, right? 1 point behind Tampa, sorry. So they were better. And last year, a lot of us had them around 4 or 5, somewhere in there. I think that's where we basically saw them going into last year. And they had a lot. Why were they better than we thought they were last year? Because in my opinion, they got a lot of contribution from a lot more of their younger players than we expected. Right? They were a deeper team than we thought they'd be. We didn't know the younger players would have such a big impact. Right. Isn't it possible that those young players fall back a little bit in a kind of a sophomore way? Like that's my thought process in putting Boston where I put them.
It's possible, but I mean, I don't think you're going to see McAvoy and DeBrusk and some of these young guys slip as much as that to fall from second to fifth. I mean, remember the gully or the gap between the top 3 or maybe top 4 and the bottom 4 in this division is as wide as the Mississippi.
I think it's the top 5 and the bottom 3, you know, and that's why I differ a little bit. I do think that Boston could finish in second, third, fourth, but I think that. And I think those teams 1 through 5 is not going to be actually 2 through 5 is not going to be that big of a difference to me. But that's right.
I like Buffalo, but I just don't think they're there yet. I'm very bullish on them, but I think it's a lot to ask of Middlestat to come in and be dominant player like Eichel. I mean, they have Eichel and Dahlin's going to be great, but I just think they're at least a year away, and we're back to Carter Hutton again.
I was going to say this is my reason for putting them 4 is because I am 100% behind Carter Hutton. And I'm serious when I say that. And everyone's laughing at me because they always think that I picked them because I didn't like him as much as Pecorine, but I do like him a hell of a lot more than Leonard from last year or anything Buffalo's had for the last several years. Well, and I think Carter Hutton, and this has always been my theory. If you want to change a team's attitude, there's 2 ways to do it. You change the coach or you change the goalie. Well, and when you change the goalie, you can change everything because that can really turn things around. And I do think that that Carter Hutton's strength in there, plus the addition of Skinner playing for a contract, which is a big deal. Middlestat coming in, obviously they have maybe the rookie of the year, in Dahlin. This team is going to be scarier. It's not like sometimes teams don't go from 8th to 7th to 6th.
Yeah, I've got Florida 4 because I think Luongo will play his 55 games. He's had a different workout this year. I think he'll be good. They have Mike Hoffman. I mean, this is a team that has solid everything. Like I just think they're being widely overlooked. Don't go by the fans in the stands. Just go by the wins in the win column.
Yeah, I have Buffalo at 5, and Act. The thing is that with Hutton, I mean, I think last year was an aberration. I think this year it's going to be a 1A, 1B scenario because right now with their
always been amazing. Don't tell me that.
Okay, but it's going to be a 1A, 1B scenario with Linus Ullmark. They want to find out whether Linus Ullmark can be the number 1, so they'll probably split time with him and Hutton. Their defense is even with Ristolainen and Dahlin, who are 2 good defensemen, their defense is weak. And I love Middlestat. I think he's going to be really good. But, there might take a little bit of time for him to settle in. I know he scored some points at the end of the last year. But, I mean, I'm bullish on Buffalo. I think they're going to be much improved. I just don't think they're going to be anywhere close to the playoffs. I think they're going to be like an 80-point team in 5th place.
Well, playoffs at 4 in this division is iffy, right? So I don't know if they're going to playoff team or not, but I have them at 4. Number 3, I have Toronto. And my reasons for having Toronto there, I mean, Toronto looked impressive. I mean, obviously, it was a perfect game for Maple Leaf fans in some ways. I mean, you get, Matthews scores in overtime, Tavares scores a regular. There's a lot of things that you wanted. If you went to see what you got, what you wanted to. Last night was a perfectly run Hamilton-esque type musical. They got exactly what you wanted last night from them. But the problems are there. I mean, on defense, and I'm telling you, Anderson is really good, but at times really lucky. There were a couple, especially on wraparounds. The first goal that Montreal scored was that could have happened 2 or 3 other times, and he just if you
saw a few times.
Yeah,
I mean, watch the replays of that. And the first save he makes was this glove save that just on a deflection in front just goes into his glove. He doesn't even know it's happening.
The line that Kyle Dubas and Mike Babcock may regret that they uttered at training camp was, I have confidence in our defense. Why in the hell would you? Because they really didn't improve it. And last night, Babcock was talking on and on the morning before regarding limiting shots on goal and making it less busy for Freddie Anderson. And he faced 36 shots. He faced the most shots.
Montreal.
He has confidence because they gave up 2 goals on a bottom 5 team.
He wasn't happy. He wasn't happy after the game for us. And
he got a win.
But you know what? Montreal didn't look that bad.
No,
like,
it's game one. Seriously.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm just saying, if we're calling them a bottom 5 team, they might end up being that way. But they actually played fairly well against the Leafs, and they covered things quite well. Like, I thought they did a decent job against the Leafs forwards.
Well, there was a bit of Vegas stuff last night. The way they were playing, there was a little bit of Vegas speed in their play. They were very interesting to watch. Top of this division.
I got Boston 3, just so you keep moving.
Top of this division, I have Tampa number 1, Florida number 2, and
and this is the thing. I think I have Tampa number 1. I think everybody has Tampa number 1. I have Toronto number 2, and that's not homerism because I think there are a lot of flaws. I just think they're going to outscore a lot of their flaws. But Boston number 3. I really like the addition of Hoffman. I think Florida is an excellent team. They're almost as strong up the middle as Toronto is in that division and as Tampa is. But again, it's Luongo. If he's there, I'm in. I think they're a playoff team. But if he gets hurt again, they have Hutchinson and James Reimer. Bye, folks. Not good enough.
To answer X question, I think 4 does put you in the playoffs, and I think Florida makes the playoffs.
Yeah.
Kevin, who's your top 3 in this division?
I agree pretty much with Mike. I think it's Tampa, obviously number 1. I think Toronto 2. I think it's possible Florida could go as high as 3. I believe in that team. I think they're going to score a ton of goals, a ton of goals. Like, Barkov still, I don't think is getting as much attention as he deserves. I think Trocheck is still underrated. They've added Hoffman. They've got a lot of guys. They've got, younger players like Borgstrom that, could contribute as well. And I think Roberto Luongo will be able to play enough games. I think Florida's a 100-point team. I wouldn't be stunned at all if they climbed into the, 3rd or number 2 spot. I think Florida's a very good team. I mean, they got like Mike Matheson, who nobody talks about, who, if he were on another team, he'd be on the power play. But he just has Yandel and Ekblad in front of him. They've got a defense as well. So there's a lot to like about Florida.
Yeah, and they actually sent down, we were talking about sending down to the minors their stud scorer, who, just for a little bit more time,
Yeah, no, I mean
I think that's amazing because that's a situation that to me is not a team it's interesting the difference between what they're doing there versus like what Edmonton did. What they're really taking their time with that player there, and I trust Dale Talon, like I said, on that kind of stuff. So I really think that they're going to be fascinating to watch. Moving on to the Atlantic.
Nope, we just did the Atlantic Central.
I'm sorry. Let's move on to the Metro. All right, the Metro. We're going to stay in the East. Does everyone pretty much have Carolina at 8? Is that like the feeling?
No,
I have the Islanders at 8.
All right, Kevin, who do you have at 8?
I've got the Rangers and Islanders down in the bottom position. So I do think those 3 teams are going to be relatively similar in terms of the amount of points, the 3 being Carolina and the 2 New York teams. But Carolina's an interesting team. They've got a lot of talent. It's all young though. And I think their defense is interesting as well. And for them, it all comes down to goaltending. If their goaltending holds up, and supposedly Darling came in better shape, and I think Mrazek, believes that he's going to be the goalie he was 3 seasons ago. If their goaltending is good, I think they're the best of those 3, in my opinion.
But they have a little hiccup there because Darling got hurt in the last preseason game. He's out for a couple weeks, and they claimed Curtis McElhinney. So, I mean, it's Mrazek basically as your number 1 for a few weeks until Darling comes back. I just think that, they have a great young defense. They've got, Justin Falk there, who I still think by the trade deadline is going to be moved. I like Aho and I like Neckish, and there's a lot of talent there, but I don't think it's enough right now. They've got to get a little more experience. I think they need, I still don't understand a team that has a problem scoring trades Jeff Skinner, probably because they knew Skinner wasn't going to re-sign, but they're a work in progress. But I think the Islanders are the worst in the division. I think they're going to be terrible. I think their goaltending is weak with Leonard and Grice. Their defense is not great. Guys like Anders Lee can step up and Bailey can step up, but the absence of Tavares, and you can't really blame him for this because Tavares decided he wanted to leave, but that's a massive hole, and I don't think it's fair to have expect Matthew Barzal to fill that hole in 1 year. Maybe eventually he can, but I just think they're really going to be bad this year.
I've got the Islanders last. I think the defense is bad. I think you're talking about a 2-line team, and then the 4th line will just be the favorite line of the Islanders because people will like the way they play. I think then you've got Carolina because the goaltending is just awful. If Don Waddell thinks he got a bargain in Peter Mrazek, I think he got taken because I don't think Peter Mrazek can play the way he used to play anymore. And now that he's going to have to be a 1 for a little while, that's really problematic. We'll see how that goes. And then I've got the Rangers because Lundqvist is still going to do his best to win games. He'll get on some hot streaks. Mm-hmm. He just won't be able to sustain because their defense is a mess. And while they have a mix of young and old, the more time that you devote to guys like Cody McLeod, I think the less wins you're going to get. So I think those are the
I think you guys are vastly underrating the Islanders offense and the fact that Barry Trotz can do wonderful things. How
many 30-goal scorers would the Islanders have, Eck?
2.
So how can we be underrating it?
Well, I think when you're putting them in 8th place, that's what I'm saying. I think that this is a team. I think when you have that much offense,
how many players they have, they are a mix of a mess.
They're not, but they also have. They're also a caged animal, and they're also underdog. And Trotz is going to play off that underdog thing in the best possible way.
The least troublesome area of the Islanders is their forwards. Their forwards are fine. I mean, they lost Tavares, but
I think the forwards are better than fine. I think their forwards are good enough for a couple of their bad goals that they're going to give up. But I think
where do you have the Islanders?
I have them at 6. Okay, so
the difference between.
Oh yeah,
in that division.
Yeah, it's not worth arguing.
Yeah,
it's not worth arguing. But I just see, but I say this because I think the Islanders actually could be more dangerous than that. But I have them at 6. But I think I'm worried about them, because I think that they will be an actually interesting team because they are so much backed up into a corner, and and the world is so against them.
But the Islanders were 3 points out of 8th last year. They lost Tavares. They gained Scrubs. Sorry, guys, but they were Scrubs.
And they lost too.
But the biggest acquisition they made was Barry Trotz. If Barry Trotz is worth 3 more points than the Rangers, then maybe they are out of 8th. But I just don't see it. I just don't see it. This is a transition year for them, and they need it that way. And they shouldn't. Hey, lose for Hughes. That should be on the inside of all their jerseys.
I agreed.
Don't put it inside. Put a patch on.
I'd say announce it in between periods every damn game.
Oh, Lord.
I have New Jersey 5.
That's where I am with Jersey too.
Yeah, I mean, they just didn't do anything. I think the young guys will grow, but I just don't see. And now Schneider, I don't know how serious this injury is.
To start the opener, but we'll see. It's a wait and see.
I mean, the Devils are a good team, but the problem is everybody in that division is pretty good. That's the issue.
As you climb the ladder, where are they getting these wins from? They're probably getting them from the bottom, and how many can those sustain the team for a season? That's the problem.
Now, if could really surprise us this year in the NHL, it's this team. If I was to pick one team that could finish in the top 2 or 3 in this division and shock us all, it would be this team, because I just think they're so fast. They play so fast. They consider themselves the Golden Knights of the East when talking to some of the players, and that's what they're going for. That's their motto, that they're going to be young and fast and quick, even though we proved yesterday that the Knights are the 30th oldest team in the NHL. But they're going to be young and fast and quick, and that's going to be I don't know. I think so number 4 is where I have Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Is everybody sort of in agreement with that?
No, I got them higher.
Oh, you got them higher. All right. Okay, cool. So 4 for me is Philadelphia. Who do you have it for, Kevin?
trying to think what my order was now. I've got Washington, I've got Philadelphia, then Pittsburgh,
Columbus.
Yeah.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, Columbus is a good debatable one. That's a really interesting one, right? Because of who knows what's going to happen there.
I think the Panarin question mark is going to affect them to some degree.
Yes.
I do.
Yeah, it has to, because I think they're going to get to that point, and I still think they're a really good team, but they're going to get to February and they're going to have to make a decision, and it's one that gets debated here all the time. But what do you do? Do you go for the playoffs? And it sums up the difference between Mike and I. I always want to go for it. Mike says you got to sell the asset.
Well, the thing is, Kev, it's actually a double whammy because, and I'm sure you've heard the talk about Bobrovsky saying he doesn't want to talk about contract.
Yeah, I was on Reddit this week, and I did and Ask Me Anything, and they asked me for a bold prediction, and I predicted that the Sergei Bobrovsky would be traded either to the St. Louis Blues or the Philadelphia Flyers.
Yeah.
As a rental goalie, because I think both of those teams are going to be in the thick of it. Now, that's only going to happen, I think, if Columbus believes they can't make any noise. And, I think they can make noise. The problem is we all know in this league, a bad start can ruin you. And, they're starting with Seth Jones, on the disabled list.
Yeah.
So, we'll have to kind of see what happens there. But the Blue Jackets are still a very competitive team, and the problem with this division is, the difference. Like I don't think it's unthinkable that X right on the money that the Devils could move up, because they're a really good team. Right. But so are the Philadelphia Flyers. So are the Pittsburgh Penguins. That's a good division.
I had the Flyers fourth because of the goaltending situation, and if they do make that kind of move, then they could move up. But and I have Columbus third. Pittsburgh second, and the Capitals in first.
Yeah, let me sound like Eklund here for a minute, because I think this is the kind of thing that Ek would say, and I if he said it, I would agree with him on this.
All right.
My feeling about the Flyers goaltending is I certainly understand the history of the Flyers goaltending, that it's really been since Ron Hextall was between the pipes that we've seen a stable presence, one that everybody trusted long term. And that he was the guy. However, that goalie is now in the general manager's seat, and I think he looks at this kind of cast of thousands that he has there in terms of the goaltending, and Carter Hart waiting in the wings to be the guy at some point. And I think if there's one guy who somehow can manage that group and sort of make it work right into the playoffs, I think it's Ron Hextall. So with that in mind, because I like that team so well, I like their offense, I love their young defensemen. Mm-hmm. I think this is their year. I think they've got a lot going on, and I think Hextall will kind of pull will have some magic and somehow be able to sort of weave that group into credible goaltending all season.
I hope you're right. I wouldn't say that, though. It's funny. Because my issue is this. I feel like Hextall, the coach, has an unrealistic opinion of Brian Elliott. That's I get the feeling that that they think Elliott is better than he is, and that's my issue. Is like how long they go on that line. Like if they don't go in that, if they go to Stolarz, and which is fine, I'm fine with that. If they go to this guy where they just got from Toronto, yeah, I mean they could do that too. They would definitely, if Bobrovsky was in any other division, they'd be all over it. I think their feeling there is that getting Bobrovsky out of Columbus in their own division would be tricky, but they would definitely be all over getting a goalie for 1 year if they could find it.
Maybe a Varlamov, maybe somebody who's a rental.
Somebody like that, I can see.
I don't think they're going to do this. Here's the thing: we all can nitpick the goaltending all we want. Elliott was showing towards the end of camp and preseason that he's healthier. They still made the playoffs with that goaltending. Was it great? No. But here's the thing: they're going to have a top.
The Penguins with that goaltending, and that's the other thing. And they were never terrible.
They weren't going to beat them anyhow with that team. But now. Hold on. So now I think they have a top 5 power play in the league for as long as Simmons and JVR are there. We don't know if Simmons will stay the whole season or not. That is going to be a question. But it's not affecting their locker room because it's pretty much a dead issue and it won't be talked about at all. So I think It's not going to affect that team.
Yeah.
Their top 4 on defense is solid. They will outscore some teams.
Yep.
I think they will come in third.
A healthy Brian Elliott is still Brian Elliott. You know, Brian Elliott has never.
But he still made the playoffs, Mike. That's
the question is how
right, but
good
he won't
has
get you.
to be,
He won't
right?
get you
That's
far
how
in the
good does he have to
playoffs.
be, right? So that's the issue. But and I do think he's very good at. I do think Hextall is going to be playing, and I think Hextall and Hackstall feel very different about Brian Elliott. I do. I get that impression. So, and I think Carter Hart will be up midway through the season.
no way.
No way.
I do.
Unless there's injuries. Injuries are the only thing that.
No, because I think this is what I was talking to somebody the other day, and I asked them this, and this is a person in the Flyers organization, and I said, "Is it? You know, everyone says he needs 1 year in the AHL, right? And that's perfectly legitimate.
At least 1 year, maybe more.
They say, well, he might not. The person I talked to, the person said he might need half a year, and that's what they were saying. Now, I'm not sure that happens, but
Well, if they want to ruin him, then go ahead.
I don't think the feeling isn't there. They're going to ruin him. I mean, he was like third or fourth
I mean,
in the preseason.
if he has a 1.2 goals against halfway through the season, and he clearly is better than
that's the kind of thing that would do it.
Okay,
Yeah.
Here's the thing, though. And Varlamov had that meteoric rise, and it really didn't help him with Washington at all or the rest of his career. If he gets 25 games in and you decide he's going to come up, and then all of a sudden all these injuries start occurring, and then you're putting him in for 10, 15 games in a row as a rookie, which could happen with the Flyers the way they are currently constructed, it's not worth it. That's why they got Calvin Pickard. Leave him alone.
No, I do think that's why they got Calvin Pickard. I think you're right. I think that's they don't want to go there.
With regard to whether or not Hackstall and Hextall are on the same page, what I would say about that only is this: you know, it really matters what the coach thinks in all teams, but it matters more in Toronto what Mike Babcock thinks does in Toronto, or that it does in Philadelphia. Like I think if Ron Hextall decides something's going to happen with the goaltending, I think he's going to say to Dave, you know, Dave, I brought you in, and I believe in you, but you know, I'm the goalie here. You know, I have a sense of the goalies, and I think this is what we got to do. And
although Kevin, you know, I never thought that Kyle Dubas would flex his muscles as much as he did in the last week, because I don't think Mike Babcock was very pleased that they put McElhinney and Pickard on waivers. He has no safety net now. I was talking to a veteran reporter yesterday and said the reason that they didn't keep they could have kept 3 goaltenders because all of them had to clear waivers. They didn't do that. They sent McElhinney and Pickard through waivers. They both got claimed. If they had kept McElhinney and kept a 3rd goaltender, Garrett Sparks would have never played a minute. And that's what Dubas was doing. He's like, I want you to play this young guy, and the only way I can get you to play this young guy is by sending the other guys away. Now, they didn't expect them both to be claimed, and that's going to hurt them. But I think that was the motivation why they sent McElhinney and Pickard down and kept Sparks, and that was a Dubas decision, not a Babcock decision. At least I think it.
Well, I mean, you're a lot closer to that than I am, so I don't want to dispute you, but it's hard for me to believe that you would do anything to tick off Mike Babcock with that contract.
Right.
You know, I bet there was a discussion about it.
Yeah, I'm sure there was.
And I mean, you know, maybe there'll be a trade-off down the road as well, where maybe, you know, because one thing about Babcock is that, you know, sometimes we portray him as a tyrant, but he's a very smart man, and he's very political. Like, he understands when there are battles that, you know, he needs to fight and when he doesn't. So, and I also think he's respectful of the process. So, you know, I could see him having that conversation and not liking it, but saying, all right, you know, this is what you're going to do. So anyway.
Okay, moving on to the Pacific. And if anybody's got to go, feel free. And we appreciate, you know, if you have to go, then you have to go.
Well, we didn't say who 1 and 2 are. I mean, I think it's
1 and 2. Okay, sorry. Yeah, I guess. I mean, for me, I actually put Columbus on the top now, and I'm going off that, and I know that surprises people, but I actually think sometimes the way their GM, not Varlamov, their GM is handling this, Kugelainen, the way he's handling this, I really like, and I think that because they've been pretty he hasn't really even screwed around with the fact that he's going to try to convince these guys to stay. Now, whether they can or not is one thing, but I think this becomes, I mean, I like Russians playing for contracts too. That's another thing I've always been a fan of. Picking Russians playing for contracts. Like, you've got to remember that, yeah, they could be traded, but yeah, they also want to get big contracts next year. So
I don't know. Alexander Semin wasn't great in the contract year, but anyhow.
Yeah,
every year was a contract year for Alexander Semin.
He was an outlier Russian. So.
Yeah, but I think in general, Russians playing for contracts get a little more serious. And it's true throughout the world, the business world. My wife's competing with a first generation Russian person. She's like, wow, it's incredible. I mean, they really get focused, and I think that what you're going to see is Panarin and Bobrovsky having killer seasons. And I think that whether or not they trade them or not, still could be enough to get Columbus on top, because they were close enough last year to be on top.
I mean, that would be the best case for Columbus, because then they get the most value for them. But with all the distractions going on, I don't know if that's going to be the case. I don't think Panarin's going to have.
This isn't Toronto. This isn't like distractions in Columbus are what, I mean, this is Columbus. We're not talking about
Ohio State is the distraction.
Well, I think Washington's won, Pittsburgh's too. I think Washington will have the best power play in the league. I think Washington also showed last night that if your defense isn't quite perfect or has great foot speed, they'll expose it. And again, if you take penalties, you're going to get killed by the Capitals. Like 5-on-3, you might as well just walk away. You know they're scoring. Like it's a given.
And I can't believe I didn't pick Kuznetsov to win MVP this year, because I thought about it in the offseason, because I'm such a believer in his game now, but I didn't. I went with Tavares. But if you watched him last night, you're thinking, wow, Kuznetsov's going to have an unbelievable year. I've got Washington 1, Philadelphia 2.
Washington 1, Philadelphia 2. All right, we're going to do the Western Conference tomorrow, because I don't want to rush everything here.
I just want to talk about how well John Gibson did. That's why. Anyhow.
Yeah. How about we predict the 8 playoff teams?
But I would like to, because I don't think Kevin will be here tomorrow. I would like to hear Kevin's thoughts on the West real quick before we go, and then we can get into the playoff teams later.
Well, I was a San Jose guy, but I was singularly unimpressed last night. But I am a San Jose guy in terms of I think they'll win that division. I have Vegas higher than a lot of my colleagues. I have them 2. I think they are for real. I like the changes. I think Pacioretty and Stastny are, improve that team's offense. I think they're going to miss Schmidt though quite a lot.
Oh yeah.
I think that was a significant kind of loss for them. And as is always the case, the health of Fleury. I mean, I don't think he's injury prone, but he's had a number of injuries that have sort of taken him out. So I like that. I think Kovalchuk is going to make a difference on the Kings. I see them as a playoff team. I think Ducks also are in the playoffs as well. I think Arizona is vastly improved, but I don't think they'll get there quite. I think Calgary is improved, but I don't think they're going to get there. I think Edmonton, nobody's talking about them, but if you got Connor McDavid, you're in the hunt, in my opinion. And sooner or later, that defense will be better. I'm a real big. They didn't send Evan Bouchard down, right?
No,
not yet. No.
Yeah, I really like him. If there's a defenseman that I think can play at that age, I think it could be him. So it'd be interesting to kind of see that as well. And then, in the Central, I wrote this. I don't think it's totally unthinkable that all of those teams could think about the possibility that they could be a 100-point team. Now, obviously, they're not all going to get there. In fact, I've got Minnesota just bottoming out, which did not endear me to the great fans of the Minnesota. And I've got the Blackhawks still near the bottom, but a little better than they were. I've got the Winnipeg Jets. I love the Jets. Everybody knows that I love the Jets, although I'm not picking them to get to the Stanley Cup final. I love the Jets. I wanted to put them there. And I just thought, this could be one of those things where Carlson ends up leading that San Jose team. But I like everything about the Jets, and I think they're going to win a cup in the next 2 or 3 years. And I like their goaltending. I love their offense. I love the fact that they got stars. I love their speed. I love their top line. So I've got them winning the division. I've got Nashville still being strong at number 2. I think Blues, I love the changes they made in the offseason. I think they're now among the contenders. I think Tarasenko doesn't get enough credit as a guy that wants to win. And I think they're going to be right there. And I think Colorado is still going to be, kind of on the cusp of there. Did I forget anybody there? Who was that?
It's pretty good.
No,
And the West is
yeah.
Chicago. You think will be better?
Yeah, Chicago will be a little better, but I don't think it's enough. I think the loss of foot speed with guys like Seabrook and Duncan Keith, just through age, like I don't think they're slow, but I just think they're not the guys they were before, and I think it's sort of making a difference now. And Taves and Kane. I mean, Kane's still playing at the very highest level, and Taves seems to be a little bit off to me. But Taves is, if I'm listing my all-time top 5 favorite players, he's going to be on the list. So it's hard for me to say anything negative. But he seems just a little bit not quite the same Taves that I knew and respected. So it's hard for me to believe they're going to climb up. But they're still a decent team. That's the issue with parity is like we're kind of ripping teams, and when you look at them, they're really not that bad. They're actually
and actually
really good teams.
Like as an example with the Ducks, I didn't know Maxime Fontois was going to make that team, but he's a big, fast, highly skilled guy. That adds another element now to the Ducks that we didn't know they had a week ago.
Yeah, no, and the only reason I took Minnesota bottoming out is they just feel stale to me. Like, I mean, I know they've added a new GM. And Paul Fenton knows the game. I think he'll have an impact in terms of.
He made a good trade yesterday too, Kev.
Yeah, no, I know, but
Russ has Minnesota winning the division.
Minnesota.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, that's how weird this division is. I mean, let's just say.
Yeah, no, and I think that's fair. Like I said, if any one of those teams got 100 points, you can't say you'd be stunned. I mean, the Blackhawks. Still have some of the same guys that won 3 Stanley Cups. So
yeah, but that's the only team because it would be such a dramatic reversal of fortune.
Yeah, but you're not putting into account what they did when they had their goal. Crawford's coming back on the 16th.
Well, yeah, I mean, I pointed that out. Crawford, assuming he's going to play, he's been medically cleared, but I don't know where his game is at, everything, but he played 28 games, and their save percentage in those games was .929, and everybody else played it was .902.
Yeah,
exactly.
That is a significant difference.
He was 7 games over 500 in those games too. I mean, it's just like that team with Crawford's, and I think Cam Ward's a big step up from where they were. That's too. I really do think
they have so many holes on that team.
Yeah, I mean that's fair, but they also have some talented players.
They do.
Yeah, so many good players too. So it's like there's definitely stuff. I mean, we'll get into this tomorrow, but everybody's so different in the West. It does deserve its own show for sure. And I think the Sharks, even though they played terrible last night and got killed, they doubled up on the shots on the Anaheim Ducks in that game.
I think Gibson was the difference yesterday. He was
the difference. I mean, doubling up in a terrible game. I mean, the Sharks are going to be dangerous.
They'll be really dangerous. Just doesn't let anything in.
Yeah, although I picked San Jose to get to the final, and I got an email from an avid reader who said, "Oh no, he was just I got him losing. I got him losing to the final. In the final, he goes, that would just break my heart yet again if they got to the final."
Yeah.
All right, I got to run, guys.
All right, thank you, Kevin. Thanks very much.
See you, Kevin.
We'll get into this. We'll get into this tomorrow for sure. As far as the playoff teams, I guess we have a second to. We can do that or now.
We can do it quickly.
We'll do the quickly playoff teams in the East. Go ahead, Russ.
So I've got the wild cards being Florida and Columbus.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
And then you know who everybody else was that I said earlier.
Yeah, I have the 3 automatics being Tampa, Toronto, Boston, Florida, the wild card in the Atlantic, Washington, Pittsburgh, Columbus, the top 3 in the Metro, with Philly being the wild card.
Okay. Yep. Go ahead.
I have Washington, Pittsburgh in, and I have Tampa and Toronto in. I'm then my third, just like last year, I have Boston and Philadelphia, but my wild cards are going to be Florida and I've got this mixed up. Florida and Columbus.
Okay.
So very similar to last year. I just don't think there's a lot of change.
I am Tampa, Florida. Toronto is the top 3 in the Atlantic, the top 3 in the Metro, Columbus, Pittsburgh, and Washington. My wild cards are Philadelphia and Buffalo. So,
wow. You're bullish on Buffalo.
I think it's going to be tight between the Buffalo Sabres and the Devils. It's going to be really tight.
More bullish on Buffalo than Mike, and Mike's lived there his whole life.
Well, that's why I'm not bullish on Buffalo.
That's for sure.
It's home, but it's never.
Thanks, Peter, and everybody. Thanks so much, guys. We'll be back again tomorrow to get into the West, which will be fascinating as always. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We will talk to you then.